Hey guys, welcome to Musky Road Room Podcast and Patreon. Guys, thanks for tuning in and thanks for watching every week. Now, guys, I know the last two episodes, I don't know what happened, but the ends got cut off a little bit, so I'm in the process of re-editing them and getting them put up. I do apologize for that. Didn't mean to screw that up, but hey, it is me, and it's just the way the spring has been so far. So, but guys, thanks for listening. As always, I really enjoy the members of the Patreon. I'm going to be drawing for a new Patreon here very soon for the month of April. We're going to have one of Hans the Carver's poly carvers from up there in Buffalo Harbor. He hand makes all these baits. If you guys have watched any of his, go to Hans the Carver on Facebook or on Instagram and check out some of these giant fish he's caught on them. It is a super cool 8-inch crankbait that he makes and designed. So we're going to be giving away one of those here on the pod. So I'm really looking forward to that. And it's going to be available to everyone who has signed up for the Patreon. Guys, if you want to get in on the Patreon, I'm telling you, it's only $8. Get in there, sign up. You get access to every Patreon we've ever done. We've got over 50 of them now with all different type of guys on there. A lot of really good fishermen and me. So if you want to learn something, guys, check it out. Join the Patreon. Go to patreon.com and click Become a Member. So, guys, we got a new guy on the podcast tonight. I've got Mr. Steve Ejnik from up in Minnesota. Steve, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Now, I ran into you at the George's Musky Expo there in Minneapolis. I try to go through the show and talk to people and find newer, I don't know how long you guys have been in business, but newer guys that I don't know yet, and ask them to come on and show the new products. I'm always up on showing new stuff and having guys come on and show what they're doing. I love seeing everything that guys make out there, and every once in a while I get to catch a fish on it. So I do enjoy that. So Steve, before we get going here, let me ask you I like to ask everybody, when did you start musky fishing and how big was your first muskie?
So I started musky fishing, I would say as an avid musky fisherman in 1993.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that was really close to when I started tinkering with bait modifications, which quickly led into my making of baits.
So what was your first muskie?
My first muskie was a 45-incher caught right out the front door of your bar and grill there.
Oh, up at the Northwest Angle?
It was, yep.
Nice. Well, that's cool, man. Well, I tell you what, Lake of the Woods has been a first for a lot of people over the years, I'm sure. And what made you go up there? What led you to go up to Lake of the Woods and try musky fishing?
I had a friend, God rest his soul, he died of cancer some years back ago, but I just worked with a coworker, and he said, "Hey, want to go to Lake of the Woods?" And Lake of the Woods obviously precedes itself in its reputation, mm-hmm. right? And I said, "Yeah, that'd be fun." And so, I went out and got myself a musky pole and a reel, and I was always a really good fisherman. And then just bought myself the famous couple Booker baits, because back then in '93 that was the big thing. Mm-hmm. And then God willing, it happened on that trip. We were up there early September, so we had a week where we only saw the sun one day and we saw the wind every day and rain.
Yeah, that's the sad. I mean, there's times up there, man. It's just like, what the hell with the weather. Now, what got you into Wicked Deadly Outdoors? Where did that name come from? What was and when did you start the company?
So Wicked Deadly Outdoors started about 4 years ago. It was I've made baits and tinkered with baits since '93, but it was really about 4 years ago I started sharing some of my skill sets with the rest of the world. Wicked Deadly Outdoors was just my nephew and a couple of his friends back where I grew up around Shawano, Wisconsin, Gresham, Wisconsin. They came up with a really cool logo and they said, "Look at this," and I just said, "Hey, I like this to be like people that I know and could I use that? And could I use that emblem? And they said, we'd love it if you use that emblem. And that took off as that back about 4 years ago. And all of a sudden it became Wicked Deadly Outdoors. And that's how I marketed my baits and a lot of the other things that I do.
Nice. So what, you said you started tinkering with baits way back there in 93. What was really the first bait that you made? How did you start?
So I'm going to just tell a story briefly, but I fished with some people. One of their names was Don Gossage, and I'll mention his name. I don't know if he's still fishing or if he's even around anymore. But anyway, one day I fished with him, and he's one of the mentors that taught me some of the sport. He was fishing an eddy bait, a Dave DiRaggio eddy bait. And I noticed up around Monaco, when he got it to glide a little bit, fish would follow it. And so I went out and got myself an eddy bait, and I'm an engineer, and I love physics, okay? And quickly I found the baits were hard to get to work, so I just applied some physics, and I modified a few eddy baits, and I could get them to glide like no tomorrow by making some modifications. And I caught fish on those like no tomorrow. And so that's really what got me into modifying baits. And then I started finding out, I was buying a lot of baits, and some would work the way I want, some wouldn't, but I'd always modify them to get exactly what I wanted. So probably, I'm going to say, Greg, for the first 10 years of fishing them, I was always modifying baits. And that led me into the frustration of I'm paying for this money. And I just one day decided I was going to go out. I went to Fleet Farm and bought a $125 lathe. And I started machining down my own baits, and I made my own glide baits at that point. And that led into things like start making my own dive and rise and my own surface baits. I ran into some things like the Pose Jackpot. I've caught so many 50-inch fish on Pose Jackpot, right? But after the first year using them, water gets in the back end of them, and then that I had a few of them where the back hook would let loose. And I quickly uncovered that there was it was a good bait at the economic value it brought, but it didn't last more than a year. So I started making my own that would last until the beavers ate it in half, right? So it was just things like that, that led me into making baits. It was some of I'm going to call them design deficiencies, but I'll back up and say those baits at the market price they were at were great value.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Tinkering with baits is always fun, and being able to make them do what you want to do is always cool. And once you get to where you're making your own stuff, that's kind of the pinnacle of it, to where you can really get and do that. Your stuff here, you make a variety of stuff. What all is in your lineup?
So my lineup right now is I make a series of glide baits. I make a 5-inch glider, a 6-inch glider, a 7-inch glider, and a 7.5-inch glide bait. And then I make 2 different size crankbaits, a 5-inch and a 7-inch. And then I make a series of bucktails as well. And I have new ones coming online this year. So all the baits that I release to market are released under kind of the company, I'll call it our motto. So all the baits that we make, I want you to use little effort as possible as a fisherman and produce as much action as possible. So when you get a fish in the net, only one of the 2 participants are tired at that moment.
Yeah. Well, and I hope it's the fish, unless it's the end of the day, and it might be me.
Right.
I can see that. Well, let's look at some of these. You sent me some videos of the baits in the pool. I did a pool video one time, and I forgot there were kids swimming in the background, so that quickly became illegal. Let me bring up here. We've got this, I think, is your glide bait. Bring her up here. This is, now your glide bait, I see, has a really nice, easy glide. You've got looks like a double plastic tail on the back.
Yeah.
In this guy.
It also has a blade underneath it, Greg. So this is a video here, if I can just take a minute to kind of explain what we're doing right here. So that's a glide bait right there. That's our 6-inch one. And I was actually doing that just with my reel handle, not even twitching the rod. So that particular bait, we threw a double tail in the back, which I own the mold for. I've designed double tails as well. Sorry for not mentioning that earlier. and I put a blade on it. So in almost all instances, if you put a double tail of that size on the back of a glide with the blade underneath it as well, the bait won't work. So there's a secret to making this happen. So I'd like to take a minute just to show you the origin of how we get those baits to glide so easy, even with weight on them.
Sure.
So what I do is I actually take a 3D software. I use Fusion 360, and there's many softwares that do this. And I actually draw it up and I do the reverse print on it, and I come up with this. Okay, so this is a reverse mold, 3D printed. And then I pour silicone in the mold, and I want to show you that. So once I pour the silicone in the mold, you end up with something like this, that now I can put my components in there, and I weigh my ingredients out to be exact by grams. So now you pour a bait, and now you have all your baits designed, and you can tinker with the recipe and the design, and you can make those baits very consistent to what that is. And the end product in a 7-inch series, for instance, looks like this. So this is a 7-inch glide bait made from that same methodology. And it's on the bottom. I also put the H2O, and there's many of them that do it, adjustment. So you can add weights here as well. Let's say you didn't have that flat water in that pool and you had some waves that day. Then you can add some weight and it'll work in wavy conditions. Or if you wanted to glide a lot farther, you could work the bait a lot harder and get a lot longer glides. As you know, everyday presentation isn't the same to make the magic happen.
Mm-hmm. So that bait that's a poured bait, right? That's not wood.
Yes, they're poured resin.
Okay.
And also the back tail that I take out. This is a 1/8 inch aluminum, Greg. Mm-hmm. Everything I make is designed off the Lake of the Woods basis because I fish it 3 to 4 weeks a year. And as you know, you're hitting rocks up there and everything else. And any bait that's made with a hollow cavity or plastic on it is doomed. Not because it's a bad bait, but because that body of water being a shield lake, it's just brutal on everything we own, right?
Mm-hmm. That's now what I find interesting is that bait with the blade on it there is still able to glide. So there's got to be quite a bit of momentum that you're achieving in the jerks or the pulls to allow those blades to spin. Yep. And for it to actually glide out. So
one of the secrets to making glide baits, a lot of the glide bait manufacturers know it. It's a physics thing. And you have to make sure the center of gravity is up front. I'm going to use a number of 40% of the distance is where you want that center. And think of it like when you pull on like a I-beam on the ice or something, it has to have the rear end kick out. And because the rear end kicks out, then the bait begins to go and dog walk. Mm-hmm. So it's just a physics thing. And the magic to making these things so they can use blades and tails all at the same time really comes down to the perfection of doing it. And by the method we're using, we can repeat it over and over and over. I remember when I did the eddy baits, I was always tinkering with how much weight, where I put it, drilling it out, using carbondo. And then the problem I had with those baits, and in the day, I'd get one perfect, and then I'd lose a little bit of paint, and then the wood would absorb water. And then I would lose that perfection, which is why this bait has no hollow cavities and it can't absorb water. These are really lifetime baits is what I call them.
Sure. No, and I'm going to also say, who paints those for you? Do you paint them?
I do all the airbrushing. We do all of our own stencils here, our own artwork. So the stencils you see on our baits can be found nowhere else in the world. They're ours. I guess I'll show you that a little closer. That fin there is all hand painted with airbrushes and stuff through techniques. I'll give a big shout out to one of my mentors at this moment is Todd Fleury from he does Todd Fleury is Harvey Bates. Mm-hmm. So Todd was really forthcoming on helping me out learn how to airbrush. But, before, Greg, I was using just a spray can, and the baits looked okay. They caught fish, but they weren't at this level.
No, I'm terrible at airbrushing. Mine look absolute. It's just a car wreck. It is. They look so bad. I tell guys I'm good at ishes, fish-ish.
I think if you spent an hour with me airbrushing, you'd improve your skill sets. It's all technique.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd almost rather just give you money and me take that. Is probably the best way to do it for me.
One other thing here, Greg, I like to point out, can you see the scale patterns on on that foil in there?
Mm-hmm.
So there's more magic there. When I 3D print stuff, I do positives and negatives of the on the 3D printer. So
Oh, okay.
I put my foil tape in there, and then my it happened by accident. One day I'm watching my wife and she's making these really cool crafts, and she was using what you call a cuddle book. It had rollers, and so I just designed my thickness of this positive and negative with the tape in between to run right through that machine because I already had it in the house. The machine's only like $100 machine, and obviously 3D printing, everything else, that's a different level. But that's kind of the story on how we get that neat pattern in there, and we use many different things. But I use almost all natural patterns, and we do all of our stencils ourselves.
Oh, wow. So, well, that's pretty amazing. Like I said, that's that's way better than my paint by numbers approach when it comes to baits. But what about some of your crankbait stuff?
Okay. I think you also have a video of that. So we do a crankbait here, much the same way. It's made on exactly the same methodology where I make that inverted 3D print.
Mm-hmm.
And in these right here, because this is a resin, a different type of resin, we do one of these, a through wire, because this
Mm-hmm.
resin doesn't have the durability of that glide bait. So we put that wire in there before we pour, and there's a weight in here, right down here, to make it do this. And again, I'm using an aluminum lip, not quite as thick as the other one, but it's like 0.09. It's made for going through the rocks at Lake of the Woods and hitting the rocks. And then if we want to rattle, we simply 3D print the rattle box, and we put our rattles in there. And then before we pour the bait in the mold, I just simply add this to the wire wherever I want it, and it's poured as part of the bait. It could be inside of here as well.
Oh, okay. Wow. Let's look here and see that bait in the water real quick. You've got let's go down here, and then I'm gonna put this. And you can see it's got a real deep belly on it, so I'm assuming yep. So it's got a real nice wide wobble to it, nice roll. It doesn't look like it rises really fast.
So all the baits, Greg, let me tell a little story on that. So all my crankbaits are designed to replace a dive and rise.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a huge fan of dive and rise, but I can never get two or three of them the same. And I love the action of a crankbait. And so I've made my crankbaits to replace dive and rise. So they got a real slow rise. And if you give them a little subtle twitch, they'll actually turn sideways right in front of the fish.
Oh, okay.
So
well, it's got a nice action to it there.
Yeah, I'm not a trolling guy. So, and I have people say, does the bait troll well? And I have some people that'll troll them. This particular one is by the angle of the lip becomes a 12-foot dive bait. I make also one at 4 foot because if you're up there in Lake of the Woods in July, August, those fish are up pretty shallow. Mm-hmm. So I do make one of these that runs 4 foot specifically for that reason, to be at 4 foot.
Yeah, no, that's again some really, really nice patterns on there that you've got. Now these lures and stuff, you do a lot of bucktail stuff too, right?
I do a ton of bucktail stuff. To be honest with you, when I'm on Lake of the Woods, I go up there 2 weeks in August. Greg, my son and I, in 13 days, put between 40 to 60 muskies in the net, and there's always about 5 of them to 8 of them between 48 and 55 inches. But that's common for us every year, and it's done on bucktails. Don't get me wrong, there's 1 or 2 on a surface bait, and there's 1 or 2 on a crankbait. But those numbers were generating 4+ fish per day in the net. Mm-hmm. Those are on what we call our variant. That's the name of a bucktail.
Okay, you've got you gave me one of those videos too. Nope, that's glider. Right here.
Yep. This is actually the Lake of the Woods bucktail for algae, green and black.
Oh, the green and blacker.
Yep, that's your Lake of the Woods algae bloom one.
It's got like the Kelly green blade with the
Yep.
black blade on it.
Yep.
I'll show it there again. Like guys see it again in the water.
Yep.
On your bucktails, you do mainly all Flashabou.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have custom tied some other stuff, but I use all Flashabou. That gets me my best response for fish. There's two types of tinsel we probably need to mention in this, because I found over the years that you have your standard tinsel here. This happens to be a color shift olive right here, and I've got some color shift orange in here as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look close here, there's some in here. You see how it's almost got that kink in it, like when your daughter or the girls take and kink their hair. You see that piece right there?
Yep.
That's what they call lateral scale. Over the years, I found that to be a really key ingredient to getting fish to strike a bait. So my son and I have ran this experiment for years where we have one in the boat and one without it. And 90% of the fish, regardless of position in the boat, find that bucktail with that lateral scale. That's sold at Hedron's over in Stillwater. And I found that to be a key ingredient in bucktails myself. Okay.
Yeah. What on the back there? It looks like you got some double blades.
Yeah. So this was the hot bait last year. I'll try to show it so people can understand it. This is a 3-way right here, and I run double blades off of it, double Colorados. They don't pull very high, but it really was highly successful in keeping the fish mesmerized on the bait. And because they stayed mesmerized on it, we caught 90%. We do catch about 90% plus at the figure 8 at the boat. Now, there's some things there we do that improve your odds, such as when the fish is coming in, I start dropping the bait down low. The thought process is the fish is now looking down at the bait as he's coming at the boat. So the funny thing we always say in the boat, Greg, is don't make eye contact. Eye contact is bad. So we always make the funny joke that this is the inverse of trying to talk to your friend, right? You don't make eye contact. And then when we make the first turn out to present, I come up towards the top and I present it right on their nose, looking straight away from the boat. So this is where I can really slow the bait down and let that fish make hopefully a bad decision for it, a good decision for me. And then if it doesn't take it, then I quickly speed up and go back down, keeping that fish when he's coming at the boat looking down. So it's a pattern. It's a circle that I run to keep the fish from seeing me in the boat because it's so close.
Sure.
It has a lot of success, and my advice to people is, stick with that. And then we run certain types of blades. I'm going to call this the Lake of the Woods combination. This is a Hagen's 10, Indiana, and this is a Lakeland Mag 8. I don't know if the stampings make a difference. This particular bucktail with the color shift orange was on fire last year on Lake of the Woods. If you didn't have one out on a boat, you weren't catching half your fish or more. Okay. So if I could get into the design just a little bit of this particular bait, I would like to do that. If
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So what we do is we take one solid 18-inch long piece of wire. And at this point, I use 051, and we'll get into why. I leave this piece stick up this way, and I bend it down on my tooling to make one solid wire. This isn't a 2-piece bucktail. Then the next step is we put the 3-way on with the blades, and we shrink tube these right here so the blades cannot flip back up into the hooks. Okay. And then at the end, you shrink tube the hook, and that's done so you don't get the tinsel to tangle up in the hooks. Nothing more frustrating than losing a bunch of tinsel to that. And then the end result we have right here is we have this, and then we have our own lead weight right here, which is a trolling weight at this moment. And we tie on to this, which then we secure the threads. And I actually shrink tube that on there with liquid electrical tape. Okay. So your threads aren't, if you have this in the water, you're not going to lose it to that. One important point about this weight being right here versus way in the back, this bucktail will ride in the water more like this versus if it's way in the back, it rides like this.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. Now, with the clevises, another key factor is here, is we use 0.05 wire because the holes in these particular 6 clevises don't support the 0.061 stouter wire. And that's important because we already have to preset the clevises from like this to like that before we put them on. Presetting clevises is the key so the blades just spin flawlessly. You don't have to jerk and tug on them to get them going. Mm-hmm. We all have these bucktails that drive us nuts, and we're jerking and tugging on them and just saying, oh my God, this is harder to get my blades going than just to catch a fish, right? Mm-hmm. If you have one of the bucktails that we make here at Wicked Deadly Outdoors, I make the claim that if you throw that out there 100 times, every time the blades don't kick in, I'll give you $1. Every time you do, you give me a penny, and you'll be paying me.
They definitely looks like they do some spinning. You sent me some videos here of some fish that you guys have caught up there on Lake of the Woods on the bucktails. Let's look at a few of these. Maybe tell me what we're looking at here. You got one here. Looks like you're fishing a rock reef, a mid lake reef there.
Yep. So my son's just started casting, and I'm no matter who I guide or whatever I'm guiding, I'm really polite, make sure that everybody gets good opportunities at fish. And here he's got one coming in. Obviously, this one bit a little bit out, but I think this particular. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, how many fish do you get to hit out?
I'm going to say less than 10%.
Yeah, I will. I'll agree. They do like to eat at the boat.
Yeah. So we're on GoPro. So every year now we're making videos now. My son and I are. This was our first video. We have a 1 hour video out showing about 16 fish being caught. So this next year we'll probably release 10 or 15 videos, shorter ones. It seems like people like shorter ones, but we'll also make a bigger production as well.
Sure. Now this is that looks like a beautiful day. I wish that's the way it was right now outside. But it's not.
Greg, we wouldn't know what beautiful was unless we had these days.
Exactly. Here's another fish you sent me here. It looks like you guys are fishing kind of a wind blown or maybe some wind coming around an island there.
Yeah, so here we're by an island here, just doing the usual thing and just casting structure. And you'll see if you watch my reel handles, I reel at different speeds. I'm trying what I call a lunch line trick, right? The lunch line trick, because we all remember when we were younger, we tried to, like, when the kid behind us wasn't watching, we changed speeds and he'd run into us, right?
Yeah.
So I always call it, do the lunch line trick. You try to speed up and slow down a little bit right on the cast. And that really gets those fish excited and gets them coming in hard and allows the magic to happen.
Yeah, that was a cool 8 hit. It looks like you got some weather off in the distance right there in the upper left corner.
Yeah, we're up there. We're up there in August, Greg. So the weather is usually pretty good. As you know, August is probably the tamest month. I always call wind and rain, or whatever you want to call it, the inclement weather. That's when the seasons are fighting each other to exist at one time.
Sure. Yeah. No, it can get pretty gnarly up there sometimes if it wants to. And you got one here. It looks like a pretty calm day.
Yep.
You got a fish coming in on the 8 there. It slows down into the corner, and it is amazing how those fish will eat just on the figure 8s up there.
So, and I experienced this here in Minnesota too, Greg, as well. The fish behave much similar. So this is where the double blades on the back really shine for us. So this was a slower fish right here, and it did not want to get close to the bait. So he slowed that bucktail down so slow before he brought it across his nose, the front blades were actually stalling out. And with the back blades going in front of on the fish's nose, it actually just lunged in and ate the thing. I get people ask me, well, do they nip at the back blades? And my answer is yeah, but they come at it from the front.
Yeah, no, it's no, I like running blades on the back. I've been doing it for a long time, and it does seem to get them going, whether it's blades and sometimes I just run grubs or something like that out the back too. That's done really, really well. But yeah, you can kind of see the blades stalling out there a little bit.
Yep.
As he's doing the 8 and stuff. So Well,
Right.
do you have much luck, or have you had much luck on your glide baits up there on the woods?
I do. I do. If I throw them, Greg, I've caught for years. I've caught a lot of muskies on glides up there. It's amazing.
Hmm.
But the problem I have when I go right now, I know the lake so well from the years of fishing it. I can go up there when there's bucktails, and I can just cover more water with the bucktails. So I'm kind of spoiled at just throwing bucktails around.
Sure, sure. Well, glide baits, I mean, that's kind of the deal. A lot of the glide bait manufacturers originally came from down south in like West Virginia and
Yeah.
even Kentucky, with Jack Cobb and Bill Looney with Alabama,
Yeah.
and the Hughes Rivers. And the glide bait was actually for down here. It was made a lot of guys that stream fished
Yeah.
liked glide baits because you were literally just pitching a bait 20 feet because the
Right.
streams are so narrow and you wanted something that stayed in the water longer,
Yep. You want something to stay
basically.
in front of them. Yep. So a glide bait is a glide bait and a rubber bait. I'll say is typically your cold front or cold water bait.
Hmm.
And my rule of thumb is even on Lake of the Woods or around here is if they're following rubber, put on a glide bait. If they're following a glide bait, put on rubber.
Hmm.
So I mean, and don't get me wrong, like a bulldog, for instance, you're never wrong to have a bulldog on. It depends what's your mission. So I'm out there on a mission to put anywhere from 3 to 7, 8 fish a day in a boat, and the weather conditions have to be right before you'll see me throwing rubber. I had one year on Lake of the Woods. We had a really cold year. I put over 60 muskies in 3 weeks in the boat in 3 weeks, with the biggest one being 58. But that was the
Wow.
year when I only wanted cold water baits.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. Now you sent me some pictures here too. What is this guy? Oh, no, that's not it. Uh, there we go. There's a smiling face.
Oh
What's
yeah,
the what's the story behind this? Is this a Lake of the Woods fish or is that a
oh yeah.
Minnesota fish?
No, that's a Lake of the Woods fish. My wife always says the only time I smile like that is when I got a muskie in my hand.
There you
But
go.
but yeah, it's one of our Lake of the Woods fish. You can see right here. I mean, I use the spot lock features, so you get a fish on. Any of my videos, you hear there's double beep. Well, that's the spot lock being told to be on, and then you finish your battle, right?
Sure, sure. That looks like it's kind of a shitty day out with cloudy, windy, but nice fish in the net.
We got a
And
reindeer
then
on there, so you know it is.
yeah, and then this one here, you said you were telling me about this kid. What's the story behind this?
Yeah, so this is Bucky. He's one of my Indian friends from back over in the east side of Wisconsin, and he loves my bucktails as well. He had one of the bucktails with the blades on the back, a variant. And this is his first fish over 50. It's a 52-inch muskie. He calls it the Wisco 52. This is a barred muskie, or I don't know if that's a barred but it's a
Uh,
Wisconsin strain.
no, yeah, it's a Wisconsin. It's a very beautifully patterned fish. I don't know if I'd call it barred or not, but it's a very
Right.
beautifully patterned fish. And so was this fish up in northern Wisconsin?
Not northern. I would say the Shawano, Wisconsin area.
Okay, okay, yeah. No, that's a dandy fish there, man. I tell you
Yeah,
that.
it
I mean,
is.
it sounds like your stuff's going really, really good. What different blades do you make? I know you showed the one combo there. Is there other combos that you make?
So yeah, I don't have the other ones here with me right now, Greg. But the two I make one smaller version. So this is a Mag 8 and a Mag 10 from Hagen's. I have one where I run an 8 Indiana and a regular 8 Colorado for a smaller one. In fact, I think one of the fish pictures I sent you was a 50-inch fish, and that was on Lake of the Woods, and it bit a smaller one. We call it the cater tail. With a K. The only reason I call it the cater tail is I guide some for muskies up here, and I gave
Mm-hmm.
away a free day of guiding because I run a guest house up here as well. And the guest came up here. He was actually from Palestine, but he had a small bucktail and he wanted a smaller bucktail, so I made one just for him, and he loved it and he catches fish. So I just named the bucktail after the person that drove me in that corner to make it.
Oh, okay. Those probably can work them a little bit faster too, and everything.
Yeah.
Do they have the same amount of weight on them as the other ones?
They do. I use 1.25 ounces lead. And
Okay.
that just seems to be the balance. It's one of those things where the specific kind of blades you use, you want the weight to be at a certain depth at a certain speed. And that's an experience thing, right? You kind of learn what that is. And I will make the statement that when I fish here around Leech Lake, Minnesota, Walker, Minnesota, and Lake of the Woods, the fish are generally patterned the same that year. What I see works on Lake of the Woods works here, and it changes year to year. But I'm going to say whatever's the driving force is very similar colors, very similar baits.
Mm-hmm. What's been maybe your top 3 colored bucktails up on Lake of the Woods, or for you just in general? What has been your top 3 best color patterns in your stuff?
Yep, Lake of the Woods, and I think you probably know this. I'm probably preaching to the choir. So Lake of the Woods, once you find a color, you're on that week. We know that, right? Once you figure out what color, then you're going to have some fun. A black skirt with nickel blades is a must to have in the boat. There's no question about that. And then I would say this is new, but I'm going to tell you it's not going away. This is what you call an olive green color shift. You're going to want to have some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then my third choice is going to be, I don't have the color here with me, but there's a rainbow skirt. It has all the colors. It looks like a rainbow. When those fish on Lake of the Woods want that rainbow with nickel blades, you better have it, or you're not catching a lot of fish. Because there's been 2 years I've been up there in the last, I'm going to say 7 years. That's the only bucktail they wanted.
Good deal. What's when you're up there, do you fish more rock or weeds?
So I do both. So I know the lake good enough, Greg, where I know structures from the standpoint of I know when to go them to get a follow versus a strike. I actually know my structures to when the fish are feeding on that structure and when they're just going to do a lazy follow or not move. Typically, when I'm up there in August, it's not a weed bite. It's typically rock, okay? When I will tell you that happens to change, let's say you got a cold front. The Lake of the Woods fish go to sand to stay warm. And sand is going to have weeds. So if the fish are in weeds, just cognitively think about that and say, is it colder weather? So if I was going to say, when do you fish weeds versus rock? I would say in the morning, I would check the weeds because that's going to be where it's a little bit warmer in that sand.
Mm-hmm.
These are cold-blooded animals, and they like the heat. They don't like direct sunlight. So another instance would be, if you're gonna say I'm in cabbage, if you got high skies, the fish might be in the weeds, protecting themselves from the sun. If that's the instance, you got to get a bait that's going to sit on those weeds and move slow to get them to poke out. And then you have the cloudy days. So the cloudy days, or I'm going to call it partly cloudy, that's going to be rock weather all day
Sure.
rock weather.
Sure. No, I totally get it. Well, I tell you what, Steve, it's been it's been cool having you on here and seeing some of the baits and stuff that you're making. The glide bait is really cool with the blade on there. I think that's something very unique that you got going on, and I like that. It adds not only the side-to-side movement, but a little vibration from that blade as well. Where can people find your stuff at?
So my wife and I are starting up a square website here in about, I'd say, the next couple of days. So you'll be able to find us at wickeddeadlyoutdoors.com. And I would just look within the next 3-4 days. We'll have it up and running.
All right. So, and we're doing this. So just so Steve, people know, I don't know when I'm going to put this podcast up just yet. So we're doing this at the end of March right now. So if this goes up like the second week of April or something like that, the website will probably already be up and good to go, right?
Right. You're 100% right. So, Greg, I got to ask you, what is it? You guide up on Lake of the Woods some, right?
Yeah, I do. That's where I'm spending my summers now. I've been, this will be my fourth summer up there. Interesting lake. I've always found, and this is just growing up where I did and growing up fishing the way I grew up, I've always found shield lakes to be the hardest lakes I've ever fished.
Really?
Because I do not like covering water. I like to grind and pull fish out. Covering water to me means I failed on that spot. So why am I going to catch one on the next spot? I grew up fishing. You put your trolling motor down, it stays down for 3 or 4 hours. That's just how I grew up. So fishing shield lakes, you're covering a lot more water. So it takes a while to get used to that if you're not doing that.
So can I get you some baits and you can start throwing some of this stuff around?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I'd love to throw some of that. I'd like to get one of those gliders from you because I think that's going to be I'd like to try those down south. Those look pretty interesting. The blade on there has got me intrigued. That's what's got me intrigued on that.
Well, after we're done right here, you just text me where to mail this stuff to, and I'll make sure in this next 4 weeks I get you some out. I sold. I thought I had enough 6-inch glider, which is kind of the mainstay what I sell.
Sure.
So the in fisherman always gets them from me, and they have some serious fun with them catching muskies.
Uh-huh.
So that's my mainstay, and I thought I made enough. I made about 150 of them. Well, 2 muskie shows later, I have 0 left.
Good. That's a good thing.
Well, maybe my baits, Greg. I want to make this point. I'm a design engineer in the dairy industry. I design food plants.
Yeah,
that's how I make a living. And this year, I'm extremely busy with that. So my baits, and I don't raise my prices because I'm limited in what I can make. I have very reasonable prices on my baits for the level that they're at. We're talking for a bucktail like this, $28.
Oh, that's very reasonable.
Right. You take a glider made like this, between my 5-inch and my 7-inch, between $45 to $60.
Yeah. Yep.
A crankbait like this, I charge $55 for it. You're just not going to get this level of manufacturing or custom making at those prices. So when I have them on the website, they're there. That's what I have. You can always text me, and I make a list, and I get to you when I can. I love giving a fisherman with a modest budget a really high quality bait. I don't do this for a living. I do it for getting away from the insanity of doing math.
Well, now how can somebody text you? What's your number?
My phone number will be on the website, but it's pretty easy. It's a cell phone. It's 320-212-5608.
All right. Well, I tell you what, Steve, I do appreciate you coming on here with me and us having a nice little conversation. Guys, also remember, if you're listening to the podcast or watching this, if you're looking at buying some baits too, or you're looking maybe saying getting a new rod and reel or some electronics, check out Thorn Brothers, thornbros.com down there in Minneapolis. They've got a lot of cool stuff there. And also, if you're looking at upgrading your rain gear, or you want to get maybe some sun shirts, the FPS shirts. I've been wearing the Gill products now for a couple of years. And as I always say, if you're too fat to wear Sims, try Gill. I think you'll probably, you'll like it. I can fit in it. So it always goes out good. But Steve, I really appreciate it. And just hang on a second here for me, okay?